She was abandoned with nowhere to go. He had a home, but no one to share it with. What happens when two broken lives collide under the unforgiving skies of the Montana frontier? Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The harsh winter wind whipped across the plains of Montana Territory as Elizabeth Morgan clutched her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders. 6 months pregnant and utterly alone, she trudged through the snow toward the distant lights of Silver Creek. Her father's final words still rang in her ears. "No daughter of mine will bring such shame upon this family. You made your choice when you lay with that traveling salesman. Now go." The memory brought fresh tears that froze against her cheeks. Night was falling fast, and with it, the temperature. Elizabeth knew she wouldn't survive much longer in the open. Her small bag contained all she had left in the world, a change of clothes, her mother's locket, and $3 to her name. As she approached the outskirts of town, she spotted a modest ranch house set apart from the others. Light glowed from within, and smoke curled from the chimney. Something about its solitary presence gave her courage. With trembling hands, she knocked on the door. When it swung open, she found herself facing a tall man with weather-beaten features. James Cooper had the look of someone who'd seen his share of hardship, yet his eyes remained clear and sharp. He regarded the shivering woman on his doorstep with surprise. "Sir," Elizabeth began, her voice barely audible, "I know this is most irregular, but I wonder if you might spare a corner of your barn for the night. I can pay." Her gloved hand reached for her meager savings. James studied her face, then noticed her condition. His expression softened slightly. "Ma'am, there's a storm coming. No one stays in my barn tonight." Before disappointment could fully register on her face, he continued, "You'll take the spare room. No argument." "I couldn't possibly," she protested. "You can and you will," he cut in. "I don't make a habit of leaving women and children to freeze to death on my property." Elizabeth's eyes welled with grateful tears. "Thank you, sir. My name is Elizabeth Morgan." "James Cooper," he replied simply, stepping aside to let her enter. "Most folks just call me Cooper." The warmth of the house enveloped her immediately. It was a bachelor's home, sparse but tidy. A fire crackled in the hearth, and the smell of coffee hung in the air. "When did you last eat, Miss Morgan?" he asked, taking her bag and shawl. "Yesterday morning," she admitted. Without comment, Cooper moved to the stove where a pot of stew simmered. He ladled a generous portion into a bowl and placed it before her with a chunk of bread. "Eat, then we'll talk." Elizabeth didn't need to be told twice. As she ate, Cooper sat across from her, occasionally sipping his coffee. He asked no questions, made no demands for her story. His silence was not uncomfortable but patient. When she finished, she felt strength returning to her limbs. "Mr. Cooper, I don't know how to thank you." "No need," he said. "Room's through there. It's not much, but it's clean." "I can only stay tonight," Elizabeth said firmly. "Tomorrow I'll continue to town and find work." Cooper's laugh was short and without humor. "Town's 5 miles yet, and that storm's coming fast. Besides, Silver Creek ain't hiring women in your condition. Not for decent work anyway." Reality settled over Elizabeth like a cold blanket. What am I to do then? Cooper seemed to weigh his words carefully. "I need help around here. Cooking, mending, keeping accounts. I can offer room and board, plus a small wage. Until after your baby comes. Then you can decide what's next." Elizabeth stared at him, looking for any hint of improper intentions. She found none in his steady gaze. "Why would you help a stranger this way?" Cooper stood and moved to the window, looking out at the gathering storm. "My sister was in a similar way once. No one helped her." He turned back, his expression unreadable. "I've got the spare room and work that needs doing. You need both. It's practical, nothing more. People will talk," she warned. "People always do. he replied with a shrug. I stopped caring about that. A long time ago. That night, lying in a real bed for the first time in days, Elizabeth felt the baby kick strongly. We might be all right after all, little one, she whispered into the darkness. Just for a while. 3 weeks passed, and Elizabeth settled into life at Cooper's ranch. The storm had blanketed the territory in deep snow, making travel impossible even if she had wanted to leave. But truth be told, she didn't. Cooper's offer had proven genuine. He gave her space, respected her privacy, and treated her with a quiet dignity she hadn't expected to find again. The morning routine became familiar. Cooper rose before dawn to tend the livestock while Elizabeth prepared breakfast. They ate mostly in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by practical discussions about the day's tasks. I've been meaning to ask, Elizabeth said one morning, pouring coffee. Why do you live so far from town? Most ranchers keep closer to Silver Creek. Cooper took a moment before answering. Prefer the quiet. Town's got too many memories. What kind of memories? She ventured, then added quickly, Forgive me, that's not my business. No, it's fair enough, he replied. You're living under my roof. You've got a right to know who you're dealing with. He set down his fork. I had a wife once, Sarah. We had a place in town, small but ours. She died in childbirth. The baby, too. Elizabeth's hand unconsciously moved to her swollen belly. I'm so sorry. Was 8 years ago now, he said, his voice level but with an undercurrent of old pain. Afterwards, I couldn't stand the way folks looked at me, with pity, you know. So I bought this land and started over. Elizabeth nodded, understanding isolation all too well. And your sister? The one you mentioned. Cooper's jaw tightened. Rebecca died too. Different circumstances, same judgment from others. She was cast out by her husband when he found the child wasn't his. Ended up ... double quotes he didn't finish, but Elizabeth could imagine. That's why you helped me, she said softly. Partly, he acknowledged. But I meant what I said about needing help around here. Later that day, as Elizabeth balanced Cooper's accounts, discovering he was more prosperous than his modest living suggested, she heard a commotion outside. Looking through the window, she saw Cooper confronting 2 men on horseback. I don't care what Hargrove's offering, Cooper's voice carried through the glass. This land isn't for sale. The taller man leaned forward in his saddle. The railroad's coming through, Cooper. Hargrove's getting that right-of-way one way or another. Be smart and take the money. My answer's still no. Now get off my property. The men left, but the encounter troubled Elizabeth. At dinner, she asked about it. Nathan Hargrove, Cooper explained, wealthiest man in the territory, wants to buy up all the land between here and Silver Creek for the railroad. Offers fair prices, but I'm not selling. Why not? She asked. If the price is fair, Cooper's expression hardened. Because this is my home. Because I worked years to make something of this place. And because men like Hargrove think everything has a price. He looked at her directly. Some things don't. Elizabeth felt a strange warmth at his words. In a world where she had been treated as disposable, Cooper's stubborn principles were oddly comforting. As the weeks passed, Elizabeth's presence transformed the house. Small touches appeared: wildflowers in jars, curtains made from old shirts, the smell of fresh bread. Cooper noticed but made no comment, though sometimes she caught him looking at these changes with an expression she couldn't quite read. Evening, as they sat by the fire, Elizabeth sewing while Cooper cleaned his rifle, the baby kicked so forcefully that she gasped. Cooper looked up, alarmed. It's nothing, she assured him. Just very active tonight. After a hesitation, Cooper asked, May I? His hand hovered uncertainly. Surprised by the request, Elizabeth nodded. Cooper set aside his rifle and knelt beside her chair, placing his calloused hand gently on her belly. When the baby kicked again, His eyes widened, and something like wonder crossed his face. "Strong," he said simply. "Yes," Elizabeth agreed, strangely moved by the moment. "Strong like," she stopped herself, "like its father?" Cooper finished, withdrawing his hand. Elizabeth's smile faded. "I was going to say like me." She took a deep breath. "Its father wants nothing to do with us. Robert the traveling salesman, he promised marriage, then disappeared when I told him about the baby." Cooper's face darkened. "Some men aren't worthy of the name. What about you?" she asked suddenly. "Have you never thought of finding another wife, starting again?" The question hung between them. Finally, Cooper stood, returning to his chair. "Once was enough," he said. But as he picked up his rifle again, he added quietly, "Or so I thought." That night, Elizabeth lay awake, pondering his words and the strange new feeling taking root in her heart, one she had promised herself never to entertain again. February gave way to March, and the snow began to recede, revealing patches of muddy earth beneath. Elizabeth was now in her 8th month, her movements slower but her spirit lighter than it had been in a long while. The ranch had become home in a way she hadn't expected. Cooper had proven himself a man of few words but consistent actions. He never pressed for details about her past, yet he was attentive to her needs in ways that spoke of genuine care rather than obligation. He'd built a cradle from pine boards, working on it during evenings by the fire. "It's beautiful," Elizabeth had said when he presented it to her, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "It's practical," he'd replied, though the careful carving of small stars along the edges suggested otherwise. One morning, Elizabeth was kneading dough when she noticed riders approaching, the same men who had come before, plus 3 others. Cooper was in the barn, unaware of their arrival. "Mr. Cooper ain't here," she called from the doorway as they dismounted. The tall man, Hargrove himself, she now knew, smiled thinly. "Mrs. Cooper, I presume? Your husband's stubbornness is becoming a problem for progress." "I'm not," she began, then thought better of correcting him. "Mr. Cooper's position hasn't changed." Hargrove approached the porch, his boots heavy on the wooden steps. "Perhaps you could persuade him. A woman in your condition shouldn't be living so far from town. What if complications arise?" His concern seemed genuine, but Elizabeth sensed the manipulation beneath. "I appreciate your concern, but we're managing just fine." "Are you?" Hargrove's gaze swept over her swollen belly. "I understand your situation is unusual. Silver Creek's a small community. People talk." Heat rose to Elizabeth's cheeks. "What exactly are you implying, Mr. Hargrove?" "Nothing at all," he said smoothly. "Just that appearances matter. Cooper's a good man, but stubborn to a fault. This ranch isn't worth the trouble it's causing him or you." The barn door opened, and Cooper emerged, rifle in hand though pointed downward. "Hargrove," he acknowledged coldly. "I believe I made myself clear last time." "Cooper," Hargrove nodded. "Just having a friendly chat with your housekeeper." The way he paused before the word made its implication clear. Cooper's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "Elizabeth, please go inside." "Cooper," she began. "Please," he repeated, his eyes never leaving Hargrove. Reluctantly, Elizabeth retreated, but remained by the window where she could hear their conversation. "Your final offer?" Cooper was saying. "Double what I offered before," Hargrove replied. "Plus a job overseeing the station once it's built. You could have a real future, Cooper, a respectable one." "The answer's still no." "Be reasonable," Hargrove pressed. "That woman needs a proper home, not this isolated patch of dirt." "Or is she just temporary comfort until you tire of her?" Even from the window, Elizabeth could see the dangerous flash in Cooper's eyes. He raised the rifle slightly. "Get off my land, now." Hargrove smiled coldly. "Have it your way. But remember, railroad's coming whether you like it or not. And men might not be as patient as I've been." After they departed, Cooper remained on the porch, shoulders tense. When he finally came inside, Elizabeth was waiting. "You didn't have to defend me," she said quietly. "Yes, I did." His voice was firm. "Cooper, I'm not your responsibility. My reputation is my own concern." He looked at her directly, a rare intensity in his gaze. "Is that what you think this is? Me feeling responsible for you?" Elizabeth faltered. "Isn't it? You took me in out of kindness, out of memory of your sister." "At first, yes," he admitted. "But now ... He struggled with the words, unaccustomed to expressing such feelings. "Now it's different." Her heart quickened. "Different how?" Cooper stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I've gotten used to having you here, to your voice in these rooms, to knowing you're safe." "Cooper, James," he corrected softly. "My name is James." "James," she whispered, the name feeling intimate on her lips. For a moment, it seemed he might say more, might even reach for her. Instead, he took a deep breath and stepped back. "I need to check the fence line. Hargrove's men have been known to cause trouble." After he left, Elizabeth pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks. The baby kicked vigorously, as if sensing her turmoil. "What am I doing?" she murmured. "I can't fall in love with him. I can't risk that kind of pain again." But as she moved about the house that afternoon, she realized the truth she'd been avoiding. It was already too late. Somewhere between the winter storms and spring thaw, James Cooper had claimed a piece of her heart. The question was whether she had claimed any of his, and whether either of them was brave enough to admit it. That night, Cooper returned later than usual, his expression grim. "Fence was cut in 3 places," he reported. "Cattle could have scattered for miles." "Hargrove's men?" she asked. He nodded, removing his hat and coat. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." Elizabeth set a plate of food before him. "Maybe we should consider his offer." Cooper looked up sharply. "We?" She colored slightly. "I just meant you've done so much for me. I hate to see you facing this trouble." "This trouble has nothing to do with you," he said firmly. "And I'm not selling, not now, not ever." His determination both impressed and worried her. As he ate in silence, Elizabeth considered what Hargrove had said about complications. Her time was approaching, and the nearest doctor was in Silver Creek. What if something went wrong? "James," she said carefully, using his given name for the second time, "when the baby comes, I've already arranged for Dr. Wilson to stay in town starting next week." He interrupted. "Pay him in advance to come out when you need him." Elizabeth stared at him, deeply touched by his foresight. "Thank you." He nodded, still focused on his plate. "Been thinking. After the baby comes, and you're recovered." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "You don't have to leave, if you don't want to." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Elizabeth felt tears prick her eyes. "Are you offering me permanent employment?" Cooper finally met her gaze. "I'm offering you a home, Elizabeth. For you and your child, if you want it." It wasn't quite a declaration of love, but for a man like Cooper, it was close. Elizabeth opened her mouth to respond when a sharp pain seized her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the table edge. Cooper was on his feet instantly. "What is it?" "The baby," she managed through gritted teeth. "I think it's coming." Rain lashed against the windows as Elizabeth cried out in pain. The baby was coming too early. Cooper had ridden for Dr. Wilson immediately, but the storm had worsened and hours had passed with no sign of them. "James," Elizabeth called. Between contractions, "James, I'm afraid." He appeared in the doorway, face drawn with worry. "I'm here." He approached the bed hesitantly, then took her outstretched hand. "Dr. Wilson will come, and if he doesn't," she whispered, voicing the fear they both harbored. Cooper squeezed her hand. "Then we'll manage. My mother was a midwife. I've seen births before." Another contraction seized her, and she gripped his hand so tightly that her nails left marks. When it passed, she fell back against the pillows, exhausted. "Tell me about your mother," she panted. "Distract me." Cooper sat beside her, still holding her hand. "She was strong like you. Delivered half the babies in our county back in Pennsylvania. Had a way of calming women labor used to sing to them." "Would you," Elizabeth began, then felt embarrassed by the request. "Would I what? Would you sing to me?" she asked softly. Cooper looked startled, then cleared his throat. "I don't have much of a voice." "Please," she whispered as another contraction began building. Awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence, Cooper began to sing a lullaby. His voice was rough but true, and Elizabeth focused on it through the pain. The night wore on, the storm showing no sign of abating. Cooper brought water, wiped her brow, and supported her through each wave of agony. When dawn finally broke, Elizabeth was nearing exhaustion. "Something's wrong," she gasped. "The baby should have come by now." Cooper's face showed fear for the first time. "What can I do?" "You'll have to help me," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "The baby might be turned wrong. My mother told me about this. You need to check." Understanding dawned on his face, followed by uncertainty. "Elizabeth, I don't know if I should." "James," she cut him off. "There's no time for propriety. This baby needs to be born, and I need your help." With grave determination, Cooper nodded. Following Elizabeth's instructions, he confirmed her suspicion. The baby was breech. What followed was the most harrowing hour of both their lives as Cooper gently helped turn the child within her. "You're doing well," he encouraged, his voice steadier than his hands. "Your mother would be proud." Elizabeth laughed weakly through her tears. "She'd be scandalized." "Maybe," Cooper conceded, "but proud nonetheless." With one final tremendous effort, Elizabeth pushed as Cooper guided the baby into the world. A moment of terrible silence followed. Then a lusty cry filled the room. "A girl," Cooper announced, his voice thick with emotion. "A perfect little girl." He wrapped the infant in clean linens and placed her in Elizabeth's trembling arms. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when she briefly opened them, eyes the color of stormy skies. "She's beautiful," Elizabeth whispered, tracing a finger along the tiny cheek. "Hello, Sarah." Cooper's head snapped up at the name, his late wife's name. Elizabeth met his gaze steadily. "If you don't mind," she said softly, "to honor her. And you." For the first time since she'd known him, Cooper's eyes filled with tears. He sat on the edge of the bed, one hand gently touching the baby's head, the other finding Elizabeth's fingers. "Thank you," he said simply. They sat in peaceful silence as the storm outside finally began to subside. Eventually, Cooper spoke again. "I meant what I said last night, about you staying." Elizabeth looked up from her daughter's face. "As what, James? Your housekeeper? Your friend?" Cooper took a deep breath. "As my wife, if you'll have me." The directness of the proposal took her breath away. "James, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," he interrupted. "I want to. Not out of duty or kindness, but because these past months with you have been the first time I felt alive since Sarah died." He gently touched the baby's cheek. "You and little Sarah here, you're family to me now." Elizabeth's eyes welled with tears. "People will talk. They'll say you only married me because of the baby, or worse." "Let them talk," he said firmly. "We'll know the truth." Before she could respond, hoofbeats sounded outside. Moments later, Dr. Wilson burst in, soaked and apologetic. "Cooper, thank God you're all right." The bridge washed out had to take the long way around. His eyes widened at the sight of the baby. "I see I'm late to the party." As the doctor examined mother and child, pronouncing both healthy despite the difficult birth, Cooper stood by the window. The rain had stopped and sunlight was breaking through the clouds. From his vantage point, he could see Hargrove and his men approaching on the road. Elizabeth noticed his tension. "What is it?" "Hargrove," Cooper replied grimly. "Come to press his advantage, no doubt." Dr. Wilson looked up from his bag. "Hargrove's not coming to pressure you, Cooper. He's coming to apologize." "Apologize?" Cooper turned, incredulous. The doctor nodded. "News came yesterday. The railroad changed their plans, going to run the line 5 miles east instead. Seems the survey found better terrain there. Hargrove's land deals are worthless now." Cooper stared at the doctor, then let out a laugh that seemed to release years of tension. When Hargrove knocked at the door, Cooper answered it with little. Sarah cradled confidently in his arms. The sight clearly took Hargrove aback. "Cooper, I came to inform you the railroad situation has changed." "So I heard," Cooper replied evenly. "Anything else?" Hargrove eyed the infant, then glanced past Cooper to where Elizabeth sat propped up in bed. Something in the man's expression shifted, perhaps recognition of the tableau before him, a family newly formed against all odds. "Congratulations," Hargrove said finally, tipping his hat. "Good day to you." After he departed, Cooper returned to Elizabeth's side, still holding the baby. "Well," he said, "seems our troubles with Hargrove are over. And what about our other matter?" Elizabeth asked, her heart racing. "Your proposal?" Cooper carefully placed little Sarah in her cradle, then sat beside Elizabeth, taking both her hands in his. "Elizabeth Morgan, I'm not a man of fancy words or grand gestures. But I love you. I think I have since that stormy night you knocked on my door. Will you stay? Will you be my wife?" Elizabeth's smile was radiant through her tears. "Yes, James Cooper, I will." Outside, the last clouds parted, bathing the ranch in golden spring light. Inside, a family that had begun in the harshest winter was blossoming with the promise of new life. As Cooper leaned down to seal their promise with a kiss, Elizabeth knew that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single knock on a stranger's door and the courage to answer it.